Hey gang, Tony here. I am shooting this video for the Horror Man Cave 100 subscriber giveaway. I may have missed the deadline already, I'm not entirely sure, but I wanted to do the video anyway, regardless, because Eric from Horror Man Cave is awesome. You should totally check out his channel. He does a bunch of different kinds of videos, and my favorite just happened to be when he shows off his amazing collection of horror goodies. So definitely go check him out. I'll leave the link below for that. And for his contest, for his giveaway contest, he was asking us to make videos discussing what movie got us into horror. And I actually made this video already. I did it like last week sometime in the car, and I had the windows down, and when I watched the video for editing, the wind was whipping around and obscuring half of what I said, and it was just really awful, and I decided not to upload it. So I'm doing this again. In fact, this is like the fourth time, because the previous two takes that I was doing, the phone started ringing, like right as I started. It's a good start, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I want to start out by saying that I'm not going to choose a horror movie, believe it or not, for my movie that got me into horror. So it's actually not a horror movie. And interestingly enough, I don't really think that I like self-identified as a horror fan until I was probably in my 20s, I think. Not to say that I didn't always adore dark things and Halloween and horror movies and pretty much anything like related to horror. I always really dug it, but I just didn't self-identify that way for a very long time. In fact, if you met little 8-year-old Tony, you probably would have said like, oh, okay, his passions are baseball and art, right? And then you meet me maybe a few years later, maybe like little 11-year-old Tony, you'd say, oh, well, his passions are still art, but now comic books and video games, something like that. And a few years down the line, meet teenage Tony in high school or junior high, and you'd say, ah, he's a hippie. He likes Grateful Dead and Fish, and still art. I think that's always been there. But yeah, not necessarily a horror fan would come to mind, I don't think. And it wasn't until I started writing in my early 20s when I was writing some short stories and things, and one of my critique partners said to me one day, she goes, so you're a horror writer? And I honestly never really thought of it before that. I was writing, I was writing what I like to write. And I kind of took a step back and was, well, I guess if you have to call me something, yeah, I guess I am a horror writer. Because everything I wrote had like horror elements, speculative fiction elements, and I just never really thought of it before. And as I kind of started getting more into that idea of the fact that I'm a horror writer, I started also realizing that most of what I really enjoy has that darker element to it. The comics that I used to choose to read, the books that I choose to read, the movies I choose to watch, the decorations that I like around the house, the holidays that I enjoy the most. It all made sense. I was like, what? That's crazy. I never thought of this. And yeah, so now, I mean, obviously, I love horror, and I'm a horror fan, but I honestly didn't really think of that until my later life. So, I explain all of that because the movie that got me into horror is The Never-Ending Story. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but there were a couple of, I just think that was one of the first movies that I watched over and over and over again. And it wasn't just for the fantasy elements, it wasn't just because I kind of identified with the kid reading a book and all that kind of stuff, but because there were these really sinister, dark elements to this movie that, when you're younger, can be pretty frightening. I think specifically of The Nothing, which later in life you realize is death, and the possibility of there being nothing after death, which is a crazy thing for a kid to really be thinking about. But there was this physical manifestation of that absence of life, that absence of consciousness, that absence of anything, and he called it The Nothing, represented by a wolf in the movie. And that element mostly, but also a few like other branching elements off of that movie just kind of really sunk into me and sort of represents the type of thing that I enjoy. There was also that one scene where the kid is reading the book in the school, and it starts getting real stormy outside, and it gets dark, and he kind of wraps the blanket around him, and he continues to read the book. And that's just a perfect example of like how I enjoy horror. When it's stormy out, when it's dark, when you know, you could kind of cuddle up a little bit and it's getting sort of maybe a little cool weather. That's yeah, when I love watching horror movies, reading books that way. So I could easily say, you know, that there were horror movies around that same time that I was watching, like Critters and Gremlins kind of horror movie. And, you know, I think the first horror movie I ever watched was The Blob and the Twilight Zone episodes that I used to watch, which is a huge part of my childhood as well. You know, there are a ton of, and Nightmare on Elm Street is another huge one. There are a bunch of them that I could have easily chosen any one of those and be like, oh yeah, that got me into horror. But I really feel like the Neverending Story and those darker elements in it opens me up to the possibility of darker and darker things in all of the other entertainment that I consumed starting from a pretty young age. So that's my answer. I am going to get back to work now. I'm sorry I haven't been making a lot of videos lately, but I've been very busy. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Breathe deep in the night. I'll check you later. Bye.